Welcome to another emergency ZKast, everyone. Z.S. Caraval from ZK Research, and I'm here with Bob Laliberte from theCUBE Research. We're going to be talking about the news that woke me this morning, which was that NiCE is going to acquire conversational AI company Cognigy. And I'm joined again by Bob Laliberte. Bob, you're kind of well-known analyst, maybe not in the UCCC space. So for those that perhaps don't know you, just a quick intro on yourself, who theCUBE Research is, and what you do.
Awesome. Thanks, Zias. Yeah, so principal analyst at the Cube Research. We've been really building out our practice over the last year or so. As you know, I've done a lot in the networking space, and now I'm going to move in and cover a lot more on the UC and CC space. From a background perspective, I worked for about 3 years at Empirics, which owned the Hammer. So a lot of people know that from a testing capabilities perspective for testing out the IVRs and whatnot. So have some background in that, and I'm looking forward to providing my insights and coverage into this space as well.
Yeah, it's an interesting space. It was a little boring for a while until AI came around. It's made it a little more interesting. As I mentioned, this morning, NiCE announced for 955 million about it was picking up conversational AI company Cognigy, who by all regards is considered the market leader, although in a very small market, right, in conversational AI. And I think NiCE and Cognigy already partner, so this acquisition seemed to make some sense. They know each other. In fact, you've seen this done in networking space, security space. You try before you buy. You get to know them. I was a little surprised it was a non-competitive bid, and I thought Cognigy would get over $1 billion, but given the overall UCCC space is down. I can see that as well. But your initial thoughts on the deal?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great play. You've got a relatively new CEO over at NiCE who's trying to make his mark, and so he's recognizing that AI, and in particular, a lot of the generative AI and agentic AI is really picking up a lot of steam. It's a company they've worked with already and have somewhat level of integration. And I think, from what they've said is they see the future of reimagining organizations' contact centers as being really dependent on having this single platform and the single pane of glass to enable every piece of that area.
Yeah, and in fact, on the investor call, which we both listened to, Scott Russell actually showed a slide, and it'll come up here, talking about where Gartner ranked. I'm looking at it now. Cognigy #1 in 5 different areas of conversational AI, that being contact center automation, self-service chatbots, HR virtual assistants, multilingual chatbot, and multi-bot orchestration. I think when I talk to customers and what they're trying to do right now, obviously more automation of contact center and self-service chatbots, those first two are really, to me, the low-hanging fruit. Some of the orchestration stuff will come by later. And so I think that's important. Also, Cognigy as a startup, it's even hard to call them a startup. They've been around a while, but they've really got kind of while they started off trying to sell through, I think Avaya was actually their first partner. They've built themselves a pretty good roster of customers. They showed some of them on the earnings call as well. Lufthansa, Mercedes, Santander Bank, Qantas, Frontier, Nestle. I know a few others that they didn't put on the slide, so I probably can't talk about them. But Cognigy, I mean, they've done a good job of going to market alone too. They, not only having to go through partners like NiCE.
Yeah, they've done an impressive job of being that best of breed provider for a lot of organizations, right? Not just the enterprises, but also some of the other technology providers you mentioned, Genesis, Avaya, et cetera, and others that are already leveraging them as well. So, good for them. I think this was a good exit given the market and what's going on. It was a strong price, I think, for their revenues. And it gives them the opportunity to become some part of something much larger, especially from a go-to-market perspective, being able to leverage that NiCE sales force and so forth, especially in the US and areas that they are not. And conversely, it gives NiCE an opportunity to leverage that European presence that Cognigy has.
Yeah, well, Cognigy Dusseldorf based, so they cut their teeth there, and you can see Mercedes, Lufthansa their customers. Scott actually showed a slide here, and I'll from the investor deck, and I'll make sure it comes up here, around the TAM now, where he said that the TAM by 2028 for CX and AI, he said right now the TAM is 31 billion for CX and AI software, growing to 72 billion by 2028. But then he said if you include the labor market, I'm not sure I'm a big fan when companies do this, but he did talk about it being about 330 billion in TAM. I don't personally think it's that big. I think that's a little bit of funny math, but I do think the CCaaS market has been working with a bit of a constrained TAM up until prior to AI, in that its growth was predicated on on-prem replacement. I think what AI does, and you were talking about this in our prep, about how companies are now reimagining the way they deal with customers. And to me, that takes the cap off the TAM that we've seen historically, which is about that PBX replacement business. And double click on that, Bob.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's interesting discussion, and I was actually talking to some of my Hammer colleagues last week about this as well. And the reality is people aren't just upgrading. This isn't a step function, right? It's not just a minor evolution, but organizations are really reimagining how they want to interact and how they interact with their customers by leveraging AI and being able to leverage a lot of this workflow automation, whether it be for low level, complete, or the ability to assist the agent to be able to accelerate resolution for these organizations, for the customers that are calling in. And so it really gives them it's a big opportunity for them to be able to leverage technology to be able to make a huge step function. Now, the hard part for that is that typically there's as I refer to it, is a time to comfort with this AI technology, to get used to it, to understand how it really works, to make sure that it is delivering an upgraded experience for their customers. And so I thought one of the interesting pieces that came out of the call today was their talk about, and I think this came from the Cognigy CEO, discussing the fact that organizations usually start with a couple of use cases, but their platform, once they get comfortable with those, enable them to grow and build out their own as they go. And so we also heard this from Scott, the importance of not having that as two separate panes of glass, but he really sees the opportunity to combine the Cognigy platform into the CXone Empower platform and be able to deliver that as a fully unified experience so that organizations can really accelerate that reimagining of their customer experience.
Yeah, and I think that's the reimagining is the interesting part, because I don't think we've really started to do that yet. I've used the analogy that this is a little bit like the early days of internet, where if you think of the first websites, it was just you put your catalog online. Right. You didn't really change the way you transacted business. You just digitized it, right? And then, even back, in your early Hammer days, right, the rise of voice over IP, the replacement cycle was we took out our PBX, put it in IPBX, and then over time we started thinking, well, what can I do that I couldn't do before, right? And I think that's where we're not quite at that point now where we're trying to rethink customer experience. I do think it's interesting to think about if the conversational AI agents get good enough, when you reach out to a brand, be it text or voice, right now, if you get a bot, the first reaction is a negative one. You're like, I don't want to talk to a bot, right? You agent, right? But if the bot can get you information that's better, faster, more accurate, I think we're going to see a scenario in the not too distant future when you call a brand and you get a person, you're going to be, I just really want the bot, right? And it's a little bit like online banking, where at first people said no one's ever going to go put money, so if you walked up to a bank today, right, with your ATM card and found that you had to go in to withdraw money, you would have a negative reaction saying, I'd rather just use the ATM.
Right.
But, when that first started, that wasn't the case. You'd rather talk to somebody. You were forced to use the ATM, right? Like after hours and things. And I've talked to some people like that work in banks and retailers, and they kind of disagreed with me at first, and then they thought about it and they could see the logic behind that. And so I think from an acquisition timing perspective, the market hasn't really started to hit that, the typical hockey stick adoption. It hasn't hit that upslope yet. It's coming, and I think this is very well timed by NiCE.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And like I said, to me, it's all about that time to comfort, and they're getting
Yeah,
ahead of it. I mean, they're looking across other markets and seeing the rise of agentic AI and everyone rushing towards that. And so they had the ability to basically handpick who they wanted to come with them on their journey, right? It was a non-competitive bid. They've been working and partnered with this organization. Apparently, none of the other partners put any kind of clauses in for acquisition. So, good for NiCE and being able to
yeah.
scoop them up. And as they mentioned, it wasn't just about buying the technology. They also truly believe this is a good fit culturally as well and are super excited about getting that engineering talent. I mean, you're hearing about the wars for AI talent in some of the big cloud providers and so forth. So for them to be able to go and pick up a recognized leader in the space in their specific space for contact centers that'll help them accelerate a lot of these transitions. I think it was a great pickup, and now we just have to see how they fully integrate it and bring this together as a single unified platform.
One of the interesting aspects too is that we talked about this already, touched on it, that Cognigy does partner with a lot of the competitors, Genesis 5.9, Ring Central, and they've both committed to keeping their ecosystems open, which means they'll continue to partner. But if I'm Tony Bates over at Genesis, I'm not sure I want to be shelling out, you know, given my biggest competitor a piece of every transaction. So,
Yeah.
um, so this could do a couple of things. One is it's, from a NiCE perspective, I'd certainly continue to play NiCE, right? Pardon the pun. I'd let the other vendors decide what they want to do, but it could actually open up the window for core AI and yellow AI and some of these other conversational AI companies can then be acquired as well. Because now maybe the thought is that I need to own my own conversational AI with a partner, right?
Yeah, exactly. And we've seen this so many times before in so many other industries where a technology, right, the first one kicks it off, and then it's okay. I need to have that, and I need to have
Yeah.
it. And so I think we're going to be looking over the next 6 months. It'll be interesting to see the other companies that get acquired as well.
Yeah. Well, the ones that are now in the driver's seat, if they do want to acquire, the ones with money,
Yes.
right? Certainly Amazon's got money, WebEx has money. Um, Zoom is sitting on a pile of cash. The others are a little financially constrained, a lot of debt, and you got some, um, uh, Tom Bravo activity with 5.9 and things like that. So when the activists are involved, maybe they actually accelerate that, or maybe not. But it certainly, I think, over the next year or so, we're going to start to see the splitting of the have and have-nots in this space, and that's going to be interesting to watch. It should lead to some consolidation. The risk in something like this also, though, is that if you commit yourself to one vendor, now you're like NiCE is locked into Cognigy, right? And so if another company comes along that happens to do, conversational AI better, they're locked out of that. I mean, they could still work with them, but then why make the acquisition? I'm not too concerned about it in this case because I think they're both really good engineering companies.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, you're seeing a couple of best of breed companies get together to deliver something. What it does do from a customer perspective, though, is it creates that lock-in stack. And so, especially if you see more of these acquisitions, you're going to have to make choices between one stack or another instead
Yeah.
of mixing and matching best of breed. So the question is this going to be something that's going to drive competition and increase the competitiveness and future acquisitions that follow with the other companies? Will that be able to help drive better experiences, right? Better solutions? Or is it just going to lock organizations into making a choice and staying with a specific vendor platform?
Yeah. Well, if I'm a customer, I like this too because it creates it amps up the competitiveness and makes these vendors, kind of double down on their investments in this area. And, that's certainly good for me, right?
Yeah, the hard
Yeah,
part is if you're a Cognigy customer, but not a NiCE customer, and that vendor decides to sever its ways with Cognigy, what does that mean for them from a support
yeah.
perspective and so forth? So I think there's still, and obviously I don't anticipate anyone's going to do that anytime soon. And they're certainly not going to impact their customers, but it does from a long-term roadmap perspective. It makes sense. And I assume obviously NiCE is going to be in at all those Cognigy customers talking to them about switching over to the NiCE platform.
Well, that would be the risk. Like if I'm a Genesis customer and I brought Cognigy in,
Yeah.
now I know NiCE is going to be knocking on the door, or at least there'd be some interest from the customer. I'm wondering if that 1 + 1 = 3 makes more sense than the 1 + 1 = 3 I was getting from Genesis, right? So, but I do
Correct.
think overall this gives. I mean, NiCE has been, really leading the charge on AI and contact center,
Yep.
for since really AI's moved into contact center, but allows them to just, I think, to their terms, supercharge their activities here. And so I don't really see a lot of downside to this. I see far more upside than possible risk. And I guess for the Cognigy folks, after $100 million raise and a little bit of debt, congratulations, you got to get out.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And like I said, I think it'll be exciting for organizations looking to reimagine. Like I said earlier, I like their approach of being able to get in with a couple of use cases, get people comfortable,
Yeah.
familiar with it, and then be able to grow that, tie that in, and have that 1 + 1 = 3 tie in from a single platform from NiCE. And I think there could be a lot of interesting advances and enabling organizations to really accelerate their reimagining of their contact center.
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess on that note, congratulations to Scott Russell and team and the Cognigy folks. And on behalf of Bob Laliberte from theCUBE Research, I'm Zeus Kiravala from ZK Research. And thanks for watching this emergency ZKast. And I'll see you next time on our next video.